Zootopia has always been misleading you, and you never even noticed. Luckily for you, today we're going to open your eyes. Are you ready to discover the real story behind this movie? The mystery. Former Mayor Bellwether is not the true villain in this universe, and you didn't even realize it. Want proof? Let's begin. You probably remember that the first Zootopia movie introduced a huge mystery, where someone was kidnapping characters who, later on, we discovered were all predators. The one behind it was Mayor Lionheart, but he only did it because those predators were turning savage. In other words, he wasn't the real culprit. Later, we find out that the predators were only going savage because they were exposed to a strange toxin that came from a plant called Midnicampum holoscytheus, also known as night howler. The one behind that was Bellwether. She wanted to make predators look responsible for a crisis, the return of attacks, and the collapse of safety in Zootopia. But where did she get the money? How did all of this even start? And why didn't one of her victims fit the pattern of the attacks? If you don't remember, we're talking about Emmett, that otter. He's not even that dangerous of a predator, yet he's at the center of this entire mystery. Want to know where this story is going? Hold on tight. Money. You know what's starting. It's another awesome Cinewave! Former Mayor Bellwether created an almost genius plan. She had her henchmen attack predators using the plant's toxin. Those predators would become aggressive and scare the population, and in the end, she would take power. But wait, there's a huge problem with this plan. Where did she get the money for all of this? Buying the night howlers, paying henchmen, maintaining a chemical lab in the city's abandoned subway station, monitoring cameras and everything else. All of that costs money, and everyone knows only someone very rich and powerful could sustain a plan like that. But who? Someone was funding Bellwether, and that person had a much bigger plan. We're talking about him, Milton Lynxley, the head of the Lynx family and the villain of the second movie. The villain. You're probably feeling pretty smart right now, aren't you? We bet you're thinking this theory makes no sense at all, because Milton Lynxley is a predator and Bellwether hates predators. She wanted to create a system where prey would be in charge. This is where you're wrong. Milton Lynxley had a much bigger plan that started back in the first movie and almost worked, if it weren't for Judy and Nick's partnership. Let us show you. Milton's real plan was to expand the territory of Tundra Town, the frozen district of Zootopia, but he would never be able to do that without a crisis in the city, especially because he has an enemy, Mr. Big. Do you remember that in the second movie, that lizard mentions that the Lynx family had already expanded the frozen district once, and that because of that, Zootopia expelled reptiles, labeling them as savage? Exactly. Bellwether was creating a system where multiple predators were being seen as savage. She thought she was leading a revolution, but in reality, Milton Lynxley was manipulating her to destroy the city, and in the end, drive everyone out. But the Lynxes had a problem. There's another powerful family in Tundra Town, Mr. Big's family. This is where the two movies connect. Do you prefer Zootopia 1 or 2? Comment the hashtag Zoo so we can get to know you. Mr. Big. Let's remember that Mr. Big is one of the powerful figures in Zootopia, and he lives with polar bears in Tundra Town, just like the Lynxes, two wealthy and criminal families. What does that create? An endless territorial conflict. In the second movie, we see that the mouse family controls factories, jobs, and housing for many animals. In other words, Mr. Big isn't just a mafia boss, he's the head of an empire. And what does that have to do with the Lynxes? Everything! Milton Lynxley's plan requires people who are afraid and unemployed, so he can push them out of their neighborhoods, just like his family did to reptiles years ago. Meanwhile, Mr. Big makes money by building factories and helping animals maintain their neighborhoods. We see this in episode 4 of the series Zootopia Plus, where he explains how the rodent districts were created. And yes, he uses fear to control people, but if you pay close attention, you'll realize that Mr. Big's lifestyle goes against Milton Lynxley's evil plan, and that's why they are enemies. There's a war between them. Milton Lynxley needs to destroy Mr. Big, because the head of the rodent family protects the poor, and that's also the reason why one of Bellwether's victims is that otter, Emmett. Otter. If you remember the first movie, you'll notice that Bellwether's victims were bears, wolves, tigers, and panthers. But in a very curious way, there was also a small otter. And yes, otters are predators, but we did a little research for you, and we're going to show why that doesn't make much sense in the context of the movie. In the real world, otters mostly eat fish and other marine animals, as well as some small mammals, but they don't represent a major threat like a polar bear or a wolf. Otters are small predators. In Zootopia, no one would be afraid of an otter, not to mention that in Zootopia, eating fish isn't a problem. We saw in the second movie that in the swamp market, seals eat fish without any issue. But if that's true, then why did Bellwether target Emmett? It's simple. The otter was a close friend and also Mr. Big's florist, which means Emmett knew very well that there was demand for night howler, the toxic plant, in the plant market. On the day of Mr. Big's daughter's wedding, an interesting conversation took place. The little mouse said that Emmett was a friend and that it was the florist who asked to discuss something serious with the boss of the rodents. And that's interesting. What kind of important conversation would a mafia boss have with a florist? Emmett, who understands the plant market very well, had discovered that someone was using night howler to attack predators and create a crisis in the city. But as Mr. Big himself says, Emmett never got the chance to talk to him because the otter started acting strange, turning into a savage predator. We know that only happened because Doug, Bellwether's henchman, poisoned Emmett with the night howler plant. But there's another problem. How exactly did Bellwether know that Emmett was in that limousine? And how did she know that Mr. Big's driver, that panther, lived in the forest house? The attacks on both characters have been a mystery until now, but we think you've already put the pieces together, haven't you? Emmett was poisoned by Doug because he discovered the truth about the night howler, and Bellwether needed to silence the otter before he could warn Mr. Big about the crisis. Bellwether knew where they were because she was monitoring the city's cameras. Mr. Big's driver was also attacked because he was the only one who heard Emmett talking about the plants. Up to that point, it all makes sense. Bellwether was eliminating her enemies. But what about the lion mayors? It was the lion mayor who kidnapped the savage animals, not Bellwether. But Bellwether was the one who knew where the characters were in order to attack them. Does that make any sense to you? Mayor Lionheart only detained the citizens because he didn't know what was happening. He needed to prevent something worse from happening, so he took them off the streets. He wanted to solve the problem before it turned into a full-blown crisis. But wait just a second. After both mayors fell, the one who came to power was Brian, the horse mayor from the second movie. And for most of the story, Brian follows Milton Lynxley's orders. The head of the Lynx family tells Brian that he's going to find Judy and Hops and make them disappear, and that he'll also get rid of the diary Gary stole from the party. He says all of this in a threatening tone, and at the end, Milton Lynxley even asks if he chose the wrong mayor. You know what that means, right? It's Milton and his family who use their money to choose the next mayor, and the politicians who are corrupt follow orders. That's why we're going to ask you a very simple question. If Milton Lynxley was Brian's boss, what would stop him from also being the one in control of Bellwether and Mayor Lionheart? Let's remember that the Lynxes need the mayor to approve their plan to expand the Tundra Town district. And if you're not subscribed yet, you know what to do. Click and hit the bell so you don't miss any videos. Bellwether. And if that's true, then why didn't Bellwether expose Milton Lynxley when she was arrested? If she was following someone's orders and that person was also funding the lab and the purchase of the plants, Bellwether should have accused Milton as the mastermind behind everything, right? Wrong. She didn't do it because she's afraid of the Lynxes. As Mr. Big himself said, the Lynxes are cruel and extremely powerful killers. Not to mention, it's very possible she didn't even know she was working for him. She could have been receiving orders from a mysterious figure who secretly funded her. That's entirely possible since Bellwether is both evil and unstable. Feather. You already know that the post-credit scene of Zootopia 2 shows a bird feather falling onto Judy's window. That's pretty strange, isn't it? Until the release of the second movie, we believe Zootopia was a city only for mammals, whether predators or prey. Reptiles, amphibians, and birds were left out. Of course, Zootopia 3 will talk about birds, but this is something you need to understand a bit better. 100 years ago, Gary's great-grandmother created the climate wall technology, which means that if a hot, dry desert can exist right next to a frozen tundra, it's thanks to her. But it was Paubert's great-grandfather who stole that technology, allowing Zootopia to be built for all mammals. He was also responsible for driving reptiles out of the city. But what could mammals possibly do about birds? Most of them can fly. There's no way to stop them. Or is there? The bird that dropped that feather only entered Zootopia after the Lynx family was arrested, just like Gary only made it there after he got help. This reveals that the past will explore the creation of Zootopia. Is it crazy to think there was a war between animal species over the land where Zootopia was built? First, the reptiles were expelled. And could it be that birds were too? That bird from the post-credit scene might be trying to return to Zootopia, and it will need Judy and Nick's help to do it. Do you agree? Only the future will tell, but one thing is certain. Milton Lynxley has been behind everything since the first movie. Will he return in Zootopia 3? We'll find out in the future. It's almost over, but until then, you can stay with us. There are 2 super fun videos waiting for you. Thanks, and see you next time.